people in the presidency, some better and some worse. But this is a man unlike anything we have seen. You know, you've quoted General Milley. He said that he's a fascist to the core, which I think is true. But it's not simply that he's a fascist to the core. He's an undisguised fascist to this core. He advertises that every single day in bright neon lights. And I think Republicans who love their country need to defend their country. And defending their country at this point means voting for Kamala Harris, even if you've been a lifelong Republican.
You know, Pete, Ann Applebaum said in Twilight of Democracy that there's this lie about these right-wing populists that fuel these anti-immigrant, anti-intellectual, anti-democracy movements. And it's that they're like these dumb, poor yokels that just stumble to the voting booth and don't know what you're doing. And she says, you know, they're fueled by elites that give a permission structure for everybody else to vote for these anti-democratic populists. I just want to ask you, I could name names and it would make this far more focus of a conversation, but I don't want to do that. I don't want to embarrass anybody. I would just ask you how much it has hurt you personally to have people that you looked up to your adult life, people that you worshipped with, people who you read and learned from, people who you held up as examples who are now cravingly following the crowd out of fear of standing up and doing something courageous like, say, Liz Cheney.
Yeah, it's been painful. It's been personally painful. I mean, there are people, as you said, that you looked up to. For as long as I've been alive, starting as a kid, I've had role models, looked to heroes to try and pattern my life after, and probably overly idealistic in that respect. But I think we need that in life. And so when you are with people or in a movement filled with people that you thought were one way, and then they act another way, and they act in a way that you think by your own lights is morally off track or wrong. You know, that's hard. I've tried really hard as you have to enter into their world, Joe, and to try and understand why they think the way they do, why they say what they do, why they vote the way they do. So I'm pretty acquainted with their line of reasoning, but in the end, I just don't think it holds together. I think an enormous amount of denial is going on, and that denial is bad for them, but it's worse for the country.
Yeah, it will be bad for them eventually if he's elected. You're right. No election prior to the Trump era, regardless of the outcome, ever caused me to question the fundamental decency of America. I want to drill down a bit more on that. And let's talk about, since you and I had the same background, the evangelical churches we grew up with, the evangelical people we worshiped with, the people who, as a congressman, I had trouble going to Sunday school. I had trouble going to Bible studies. I had trouble going to anything without somebody coming up into my face going, how could we have a man like Bill Clinton as president of the United States? Does character not matter? Have you not read Bill Bennett's Book of Virtues? What is wrong with you? And then they would talk about the character of Ronald Reagan, the character of the... They are now voting for a man. I will not go into the details of where he's fallen short personally, because we have all sinned and fallen short of God's glory. I will just use his words. He has said he does not need God's forgiveness. And for those that don't read the Bible, for those who do not understand what's at the center of any evangelical's faith or any Christian's faith, we are all flawed. We are only saved by grace. We're not saved by good work. We are saved by grace. And it's when we go before God and say, we have failed you again. Please forgive me. That's the center. That's the foundation of the faith. And they are voting for a man who said, I don't need God to forgive me. So how do How do they say, I'm voting for my Christian values? I'm going to vote for a man who every day undermines everything that Jesus said in the Beatitudes and says he doesn't need God's forgiveness.
Yeah, it's a psychological trick that they're playing. I mean, they've justified it by turning this race into an existential crisis that the Democrats and the progressives are against America. And so Trump is the only thing that stands between them and catastrophe. But of course, it's the opposite thing. And I do think what you're getting, the point you're making, Joe, is exactly right. There's been a catastrophic damage that's been done to the Christian witness because this is a moral freak show. People look at the hypocrisy that you were talking about, people who went after Bill Clinton with a figurative 2x4, every day that he was in office. And now they're defending a man who makes Bill Clinton look like a Boy Scout. And I think what is underneath it, I mean, it's a very complicated question. I think what we've found out is a kind of CAT scan on the evangelical movement is that there has been pulsating grievances and resentments and anger that Trump really tapped into. And what's happened is I think that faith is secondary. It's subordinate to the core identity that a lot of these people have. If you gave them sodium pentothal, I think they would say faith is the most important thing in their life. But in reality, it's not. And I think what they've done is they've proof texted the Bible and talked to themselves and created a narrative where they think they're being faithful. And you can understand people make mistakes, but at the end of the day, there is moral accountability. And as we've been talking about, this is not subtle when it comes to Donald Trump. This is what his vileness, his depravity is something that he displays every day, and they seem to revel in it. It seems to be vivifying for them, and that is really, really sad, and it's sick.
Well, which is why our friend Tim Keller, near the end of his life, said, I've stopped calling myself an evangelical.
Right.
Because that's more of a political identity marker and a cultural identity marker than it is a marker of one's faith. Right. And how sad is that, Pete? How sad is that?
Yeah, no, that Tim was such a significant figure, and he was a person that in his heart and at his core, he loved Jesus, and he was a follower of Jesus, and he knew what was happening, and he was willing to call it out in a careful and responsible way. And we miss his voice, and we need more people like him. Unfortunately, there are not many who were like him.
No, they're not. Contributing writer Pete Wehner, thank you so much for being with us. Always appreciate it.